Today is Sunday, June 1st, 2025, and this is episode 308 of the Defensive Security Podcast. My name is Jerry Bell, and joining me today, as always, is Mr. Andrew Kalat.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bell. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. We're lucky 308. That's a good number, right?
Also, a very capable round caliber of a rifle round, as I've been told.
That's what that's what I was thinking. Yes.
Not to glorify violence in any way, but
no, I like to target practice.
Right, indeed.
Shooting at old hard drives.
Data destruction policy. It's very helpful.
Absolutely.
And I see you've returned from your undisclosed Southern Command location. Sadly,
we're home. God, the weather was just so nice. I'm sad to be home because it was probably, of the 4 years I've owned that place, it was probably the best, weather-wise, the best time.
It's amazing. Well, I noticed that I did not get invited to join you, so that's fine. I'm okay. You know what? I'm fine. I like my little shack in Atlanta. It's fine.
Oh my. So just a quick reminder that the thoughts and opinions we express on the show are ours and not those of our employers. Next is a sincere thank you to our Patreon sponsors. Definitely appreciate that. And I do want to, by the way, we've for I think the past 5 weeks now, we've been airing some really innovative sponsors have really gone out on a limb for us. And so I'm very interested in getting feedback from the audience here. So if you have any feedback on what do you think? Do you like the sponsors that we've collected? Just drop us a line to info@defensivesecurity.org and let me know.
We get a lot of sponsorship offers, and we're trying to be very selective in picking the brands that we think best align with our listeners.
Correct. But this time we have something that it's not a third party. It's actually it's something that you and I are, we've had inspiration.
Mm-hmm. It's a shameless plug.
Yes, we've had inspiration. So I'm going to play that right now. Do you want to get into crypto coin collecting but are too afraid of the tax bill when the value of your coins gets too high? Are you afraid of feeling left out of crypto bro discussions at parties? Do you need something interesting to talk about on your next first date and you're not a pilot and not into CrossFit? I have great news for you. DefSec Labs has recently hired thousands of engineers, physicists, rocket scientists, and ethically challenged economists that were recently displaced by budget cuts to develop the world's most revolutionary crypto coin. We call it the Global Unified Algorithmic Reserve Dollar, built on the ledger-linked Asset for Mutual Admiration, or Llama Coin for short. Our team has worked tirelessly to ensure the Llama Coin is maximum security. In fact, approximately 32% of the world's energy production is currently used to calculate proof of whatever, ensuring that it's virtually impossible to perpetrate common mining attacks on Llama Coin. We also ensure the security of Llama Coin by keeping its value as close to zero as humanly possible. And let me tell you, we are exceptional at that. We recommend getting in now before the SEC or the OCC or some other TLA starts investigating. The DefSec Podcast and Llama Coin. Own your piece of history today. And so now you too you can own part of history.
I don't know how you could say no. I just,
It's yeah. I mean,
it's
I
a no
think
brainer.
it's just gonna skyrocket in value. I don't know what else to say. Like if you're not in it, you're
We're
losing.
trying to help you. We're trying to help you. Help us help you.
That's right. That's right. So, anyhow, getting into our stories for today, the first one comes from the register.com, and the title here is ConnectWise Customers Get Mysterious Warning About Sophisticated Nation State Hack. So, Screen Connect is a service slash product provided by ConnectWise, and it is, as one might expect, basically a remote access or remote connectivity uh, capability. And so some number of customers, it's a little unclear exactly how many customers were impacted by this, but some number of customers were apparently swept up in some sort of a quote sophisticated nation state actor attack on the ScreenWise service. Now, that is perhaps not like revolutionary. This kind of stuff happens a lot, but what I thought was quite noticeable, or you know, was quite notable about this particular instance is that one of the customers who received this notice from ConnectWise went on a rant in Reddit and pointed out that while they received the alert from ConnectWise on May 28th, the alert told them that the bad thing happened back in November of 2024.
Heck of a time lag there.
Yeah, and so the where my mind went, like there was this, and I haven't seen it in a long time, but there used to be this on Twitter, this account called Bad Things Daily, and it always used to have these kind of like off the wall scenarios, like what happens if your CISO gets arrested for fraud, like what it's just these kind of off the wall scenarios to get your gears turning on what would you do if. And
By the
this
way, there's a similar account out there now for tabletop scenarios.
was there. Okay.
I'll have to find it while we're talking, but I'll give them credit because it's a very similar concept of, you know, and it's often pulling from the news, like new tabletop scenario, exactly something like this. You're something like this happens, or so. While you're talking, I'll find it and we'll
Okay.
reference.
But that's where my mind went was, okay, so you have outsourced a service like ConnectWise Screen Connect to to provide some sort of access into your infrastructure for remote support or what have you, and then you're notified that 7 months ago there was a compromise of the service that allowed a nation state actor to do who knows what. What is your response? What do you do?
Yeah. So this is kind of awkward. The account I was thinking of is Bad Things Daily. I just never looked at the Twitter handle, and it's Tabletop Scenarios is the name. So we'll just delete all this part. This will make it there.
Oh, just we were on the same wavelength. Just had different names. Yeah.
But so very interesting question. Like, how would you know? And what I wonder about is when did they first know about this intrusion? Is it something that they had such long dwell time that the investigation was recent and they recently found them, or have they known for a very long time and are just now getting around to notifying people with very little data and very little information, which has got to be driving their customers crazy, and especially their executives who are demanding, what does this mean? What do we do? How are we impacted? How do we protect ourselves? None of which they have any information about.
Yeah, that's. I think it's a very unsatisfactory set of facts here, right? Like we don't have a lot of information. The attack actually happened against the Screen Connect service. There's some discussion about it being focused on capturing cloud credentials, and by the way, it's unclear whose cloud credentials. Even at that. Um, and certainly, what may have happened. Now, it's also unclear how ConnectWise became aware of this. It could be because, you know through an investigation into some other customer that was a victim. We know, by the way, that ConnectWise offerings have been leveraged in prior sophisticated attacks. Like this was part of the attack chain on a bunch of organizations, this time last year. So this is kind of not the first uh, not the first rodeo here with this set of tooling. But again, there is not a lot to go on, and I don't think the actual notice has anything actionable in it either. And so, to me, this is like if you were to receive one of these, you're going to have to go on a bit of a wild goose chase to figure out, like, what telemetry do you have to identify anomalous activity that happened in that window, and then you just kind of start methodically figuring out, like, because you don't even know if the adversary here went after you. Right? You may it's just it's really unclear exactly what happened, and that's the frustrating part. Like you said, it's going to drive executives absolutely batty, because
Yep.
you're stuck with this unenviable task of proving a negative.
Yeah. 100% agreed. Also, the whole is a sophisticated nation state actor. It feels like such a cop out sometimes. Like, is it really? Or are you just like, implying they were so sophisticated, there's nothing we could have done, it's not our fault? Like, it feels like a little bit of a blame shifting when they throw those terms out without any evidence to support it,
Well,
in my
it's
opinion.
it's an interesting thing, because in this context, if broadly speaking, I completely agree with you. I think one of the challenges I have with this character, with kind of the broad characterization of anything, more sophisticated than your security controls, as being, nation state, is it implies that, it implies motive, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And in one of those one of the aspects of that motive is to remain unseen. And so, if you're trying to investigate, like, if you get a call from the FBI that says, "Hey, somebody's in your network," click. And or and it's China, it's like the Chinese intelligence service, and that's all you have to go on.
Yeah. Yeah. Good luck.
So, you may get lucky, but you have to start somewhere. And so I think that's the challenge. I think you have to untangle here is finding some loose threads to pull on. I mean, just, some advice I would have is trying to find some loose threads to pull on. If it were me, what I would do is try to find some systems that were in close proximity to that service in that window, maybe at different periods. And I would do a full forensic, and I would take it offline. I would, either do it myself or hire it out, do, full forensic analysis on that system, and see what you can find. Like, maybe there's nothing, maybe not, but, like, you have to start somewhere, because otherwise you end up with just hand wringing, and that's not really helpful, unless you have, like, unless you actually have events that look like they were just, irrelevant at the time, but now in hindsight, that, they might be evidence that something was going on. But I think that's probably unlikely in this instance.
Yeah. It's on ConnectWise to publish some sort of IOCs or some sort of analysis or some indicator. Okay. And this is where it gets really sketchy with SaaS companies like this and services like this, which everybody's using, right? It's the way the entire industry's gone. But this shared trust model, as it were, this feels not great in terms of how we share information and share trust. Especially, hey, look, it's your customers. We're not even asking you necessarily to go public, but you should at least communicate more to your customers. Have them sign an NDA or whatever, but get something in the hands of your customers so they have some assurance or some knowledge or some information other than, hey, something happened. We'll tell you more later. That's like worse than not knowing.
Down later in the article, there's an anecdote about an organization who apparently was breached, and I don't know if this was patient zero and how it all came to be, but it was some organization that used Screen Connect to front end access to their to their industrial control systems, and that that they were compromised. Their industrial control system was compromised through that, and they of course pat themselves on the back and say like we caught it in time, blah 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 blah. But if obviously if that hadn't happened, don't really know what those control systems were doing. But it's not hard to think that could cause some problems. And I do think that it's not uncommon. It's not an uncommon deployment model for these control systems to have more of an IT front end to them, like Screen Connect or many other things. It's surprising to me. Maybe it shouldn't be surprising. It's surprising to me that we see these control systems front ended by things like Screen Connect, because they tend to be like really complex and expensive and deeply embedded, and then you slap like some simplistic, and I don't mean it in a pejorative way, but relatively speaking, simplistic remote access method in front of it, rather than like a traditional VPN. And maybe you do that because it's like it's one less thing to worry about, or what have you. But anyway, it's interesting to me that we continue to see that being an attack vector, a common attack vector for control systems. Anyhow.
Yeah, and it's not like, industrial controls isn't running anything critical or important or dangerous.
Fine.
It's fine.
I'm sure it's fine.
It's fine.
All right. The next story we have today comes from Dark Reading, and the title here is Dragon Force Ransomware Strikes MSP and Supply Chain Attack. I'm so tired of the word supply chain attack, or phrase supply chain attack. Like everything is a supply chain attack now. But be that as it may, this particular story is about a ransomware actor called Dragon Force, and Dragon Force is both
once again giving them a fancy, nice name is not helping.
Well, I think that's what they call themselves. I'm not sure that is a.
I think the industry should refer to them as toilet bowl turd number 7.
We don't have a story on it, but there is another story going around in the news right now about a threat actor called the Laundry, like Laundry Bear, I think is the name of it.
Oh, I think I did see that. I vaguely recall that. I'll have to go back but that's funny.
Which I thought was a little bit funny. So maybe somebody's actually taking our advice.
That'd be a first.
So like dirty dishes koala, or anyhow.
Back to your story.
So Dragon Force is both a threat actor that perpetrates ransomware attacks directly, but they also have this kind of ransomware as a service platform, which they also they offer up as an OEM capability to customers, and so this is a story about managed, not a managed security provider, but just a generic IT services provider. We've seen this in the past. I'm struggling to remember the tools. I don't think it wasn't SolarWinds. They're all starting to get a little cloudy in my mind. But we've seen instances in the past where these remote management tools, and again, another supply chain, or sorry, another. I don't think this is a SaaS. This is an on-prem um, package, if I recall correctly. So anyway, there is a quote in here which I thought was pretty damning. So there's a piece of software called, what's the name of it? Simple Help. Yes, Simple Help for customer support. It's like RDP or ConnectWise, or sorry, Screen Connect that we just talked about. Provides the ability for the MSP to provide remote support capabilities to their end customers, and that had some vulnerabilities that a threat actor, this DragonForce ransomware actor, was using. I think it was 3 different vulnerabilities chained together to attack customers. And in this particular instance, because the victim was an MSP, DragonForce, and it's, by the way, it's unclear if it was DragonForce proper or if it was one of their affiliates because of the way their model works, was able to actually go after the end customers of that MSP. Now, the MSP isn't named in here, and Dark Reading says that they're trying to figure out who that is, but they don't know who it is, and we may never know who it is unless they have a meltdown on Reddit, like what happened in the other
Any moment now.
any moment. So anyway, what I found alarming is the quote from the company that makes this Simply Help software, because they actually did recognize that this vulnerability existed and they provided a patch. But basically, this MSP apparently did not patch themselves in a timely manner. The Simply Help is saying, if the organizations that patched in a timely manner, i.e., I think it was 48 hours was what they were saying, were fine. They didn't suffer any impacts, but not everybody was so on the spot or up to date with patches. And for those that weren't, that they were the ones who got hit. And I find that interesting because, again, we often talk about the timeline for patching critical vulnerabilities to be like, week on the scale of weeks. And in fact, last week we had a story where, Gartner was telling people, like, why even patch? Like, it's
pointless. Don't bother.
It's just you're pushing the rock up a hill. So there's a little more to this discussion than that, but I digress. So what I find interesting is that if you have an MSP whose business model is IT service management, and they're struggling apparently with making sure that they're able to patch rapidly in this instance in a way that allows that causes their customers to experience a loss. And I think that there were quite a few instances where this MSP's customer actually was ransomwared. It just really underscores the challenge that we have in this industry. And again, I don't know a whole lot about this particular product. I don't know if it has auto update capabilities. I don't know that. And I can also appreciate from the perspective of a MSP, like that's your bread and butter. Like if that breaks, you potentially have lots of customers who you can't deliver services to, and maybe you end up having to go and touch their systems to reestablish connectivity or what have you. But on the other
hand, it feels like the same challenge that a cloud provider has.
Yes.
Patching their systems that's running their customers without causing downtime and such.
Well,
and doing it in a timely manner.
So as a cloud provider, we had, and it's obviously it's not it's not one uniform whole. You can't talk about the entire cloud as
Hmm.
as being the same, but largely speaking, like the platform that your virtual machines run on, you can typically patch those by doing live migrations, and you can do those behind the scenes. Typically, we would give notice to a
Because
customer.
it's built for that. The
Built
intent
for
was
that.
built into it from the beginning of
Mm-hmm.
being able to do a non-disruptive patch environment. And
Exactly.
where I'm going with this is maybe we need to do more of that design criteria so that we start to remove some of the objection and the concerns about a production outage or a problem from a patch. Uh, if we start building these infrastructure and these software packages with the concept of we're going to have to patch dozens of times a year, and we've got to do it in a way that isn't disruptive and is timely. Maybe that will change. Go ahead.
Not only dozens of times per year, but dozens of times per year at the least convenient time.
Right. Exactly. Um, Maybe that will start to push us towards designing a more resilient architecture that can sustain the sort of patch velocity that we think we need to deal with these scenarios. If I've got to schedule downtime to patch something, I'm probably in trouble, in my opinion.
So look, this was, as a CISO, this was a challenge I had with products, offerings, is securing offerings, because too often the offerings were and the processes were designed so that they could be patched. They could be patched in a rapid manner, but there was this, you know, understood but not spoken implication that it would require downtime. It would be customer impacting. And what that was like one of the light bulb moments for me was like you have to change the way that you're communicating this requirement. It's not that you sounds stupid, but like you can't just say, hey, like you have to be able to patch your system within 24 hours or 48 hours or 7 days, or like that's not okay. Like you have to be able to say, like you have to be able to patch, like there's going to be critical patches every other day all year long. Maybe sometimes there won't be, but every single time you have to apply that patch without customer downtime and within schedule. And I think if you go into it, if you go into system design with that as a requirement, yeah, it makes it harder to do. It makes it more a little more complicated for sure. Might require you to pick a different package. It may require you to spend money or maintain duplicate infrastructure, or like who knows. There's lots of different ways depending on what you're talking about. But it's a hell of a lot easier than after the fact, after you've got something in place and you're stuck with this situation where like, okay, like we have to patch it right now, like today or tomorrow we have to patch it, and you've, well, okay, but we're going to lose X number of customers because it's going to cause them, their outage. It's going to cause an outage with them, or it's going to cause some kind of performance impact, or whatever. And I think that's like I and I don't know if I like to blame Agile for a lot of things. And so I'm going to blame Agile here because I really think that, we have to do a better job of understanding the scope of business requirements. And I've seen too many times where some of the newfangled, development processes downplay that initial requirements gathering, and it's much more focused on kind of customer edge functionality and less on the sustainability. I'll call patching sustainability features.
Minimum viable product, Jerry. Ship it.
Yeah, and look, hey, maybe that's the case, but the problem is how many companies after they've released that MVP go back and you know close the debt that doesn't actually add value to a customer. Because look, I'm going to tell you right now, if you got a customer who's got a laundry list of things they want you to put into your product, and you go to them and say, well, you know what, we have to delay that because we want to make sure that we can patch your system. What are they going to say? What do you mean you have to work so you can patch it? Like, why isn't that already there? So like you can't have that discussion with your customers.
The only way I think this is going to change is if buyers, enterprise buyers, start insisting, and I kind of am skeptical that's going to happen. But
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. Anyway,
but I do think it's a better, more mature approach. You have to go with the assumption that you're going to have to patch all the time, every day. And how do you do it without breaking everything in a timely manner? We're seeing such velocity happening now between a patch being released and bad actors running with it and doing. And by the way, again, this goes back to we can't predict, right? I'm sure certain people say, well, it's only 8% that are actually exploited. Yeah, but we can't predict those 8%. And here's the other interesting thing about this attack: they chained 3 different vulnerabilities. So again, and this is something I've rallied on over and over. If you're getting into a discussion with your asset owners about how an individual vulnerability could or could not be exploited, you're kind of behind the 8 ball of trying to figure out things like chained attacks or really complicated attacks or sophisticated attacks that the bad actors can come up with that your team probably isn't going to come up with. So it's really hard to take it on a vulnerability by vulnerability, case by case, prove to me it's exploitable kind of conversation. You're going to be backed into an unwinnable fight, and it's going to leave you exposed to things like this where you have clever threat actors coming up with attack mechanisms and chains that your team didn't think of, and then you get bit.
yeah, in this instance, I didn't look to see what the CVSS score was for the 3, but none of them appear critical. One of them is a path traversal vulnerability. One of them is an arbitrary file upload vulnerability, and one is a privilege escalation vulnerability. So, like, none of them are like a remote code execution, which you would like if you see a remote code execution. Typically, people would panic at that and get those fixed right away. Maybe not in the 48 hours that that were cited here, but
So the first 2 were a score of 7.5 and 7.2. The third one, stand by. We're doing it live. The third one was a this one's okay. This one's a 9.9. Okay, so that one's pretty bad.
That's pretty bad. Okay.
But still, you got 2 7s that, I don't know. I didn't dig into the attack chain enough, but I think the point still stands. You see chained attacks, which are really complicated for a blue teamer to anticipate and explain to their own stakeholders internally to defend against. So it goes back to try to patch whatever you can. I know that sucks. I know it's hard, but we can't easily predict, as much as we're trying, we can't easily predict which of these combinations of vulnerabilities are going to bite us.
Amen. And by the way, I think it was the privilege escalation was the 9.9. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So how many security people will look at a privilege escalation vulnerability and have the mental conversations as well? If we get to a point where someone's able to escalate their privileges, we've already lost. So
yeah, it's a good point. So the first 2, I'm assuming, is what gives them access to a low level account, and then this privilege escalation allows them to escalate that foothold they got with the low level account. So
anyway, look, this is I think organizations like MSPs, where you're the head end to a bunch of customers, have an extra duty of care. This is just Jerry's the world according to Jerry. You have an extra duty of care to be on top of this stuff. Certainly if you are an organization that uses this tool and you choose not to patch and you get bit by it, you learned your lesson. But in this instance, customers who relied on their MSP to stay on top of patches in their own infrastructure were victimized, and that's not okay, to me at least.
Agreed. And this entire show is the world according to Jerry. So
True.
if they don't like it, we'll give them a refund.
All right. Our last story comes from also dark reading, and the title here is 3 a.m. ransomware adopts email bombing phishing combo attack. So 3 a.m. ransomware. 3 a.m. is the name of the ransomware group. I don't know how that came up. I can hypothesize.
I'm renaming them Dirty Socks Feet ransomware group.
Stinky feet. Oh gosh. So the story here is that this 3 a.m. ransomware is an up and coming ransomware group. They have adopted a very similar initial stage of attack to what we've talked about in the past with Black Basta and a couple of others, where they will bomb employees at their victim company with spam. And like, I don't want to say legitimate spam, like they'll sign up for email lists and whatnot. And so, in this particular story, they're talking about a report from Sophos that enumerates an attack they witnessed from this 3 a.m. I thought it was interesting that to talk about, because we're seeing, more and more instances of actors adopting the same tactic and having luck. And so in this instance, what the initial part of the attack is very similar to what we've talked about in the past. But unlike in the past, where the end game, or I should say like the medium, the proximate game, was to steal an access token from the victim by directing them into a login portal, a proxy login portal where they would steal an access token, and that in turn would allow them to to masquerade as the victim user, assuming they weren't using like phishing resistant authentication. This is a different, the proximate attack here is a little bit different. What they're doing here is they're bombing the victim employee with spam, and then they're calling the threat actor here is calling over voice, VoIP line. They're calling the victim and claiming to be from the IT department of the victim. And they actually go so far as to spoof the caller ID so that it looks like it's coming from the company's help desk.
Hey, can we just talk about a moment the fact that you can still spoof phone number sources is terrible, and the phone company should be flogged for that?
I agree. Totally agree.
Like, this is not a difficult, challenging technological rocket moon race problem to solve. We don't need a Manhattan Project to solve this problem.
We have the technology.
They just choose not to do it, and it's very frustrating. Sorry. Back to your rant. I'll stop my rant for your rant.
So I found it also very interesting that they actually have a copy of the script. If you jump to the Sophos report, they have a copy of the script, like the voice script that the threat actor is using when they have the phone discussion with the employee, and it's quite good. I have to say, like they're playing it off as, hey, there's this this industry-wide attack that's going on involving involving spamming accounts, and we've seen instances where that is happening to our own employees. Have you seen something that looks like that? And then, of course, they know the answer to that because of course the employee's seen that. And so that kind of plays. They've established a bit of a rapport that, oh yes, I have. Anyway, they then convince the employee to install and enable the Microsoft Quick Assist agent, which, by the way, is not enabled by default anymore. That requires the employee to actually go through a process to install it, but it is a default. It's a Windows. It's a piece of Windows software or Microsoft software. It's not like some third party. And the threat actor here convinces the employee to enable the threat actor to connect remotely in through Microsoft Quick Assist. Once they're connected, the threat actor directs the web browser on the victim's computer to go to a website that the threat actor controls, which is branded so that it looks like it's associated with Microsoft Quick Assist, but it downloads VBS, downloads a package which includes a VBS script. And here's where it gets interesting. I thought it once that gets downloaded, the threat actor launches it, and it in turn spins up a virtual machine using a copy of QEMU that comes with the package. So it's not like installing a whole hypervisor. It's actually just using a hypervisor that gets delivered with the package and spins up a Windows 7 VM using a virtual disk that comes as part of the attack package. And then from there, the agent kind of disconnects with the victim and says, okay, it's problems resolved. Thank you for your time. And now the actor has an attack VM running on a system inside the company's network. And the best part is that almost no security tooling is able to catch that because it's all the stuff is running inside of a VM. And so it's pretty damn clever. And so the Sophos article goes through a really good enumeration of like all the steps that the threat actor takes from from stealing data on the victim's local computer. They basically scanned the network. They were able to, in this instance, obtain access to a server. It's unclear, by the way. They don't really go into how that access was obtained. Perhaps the workstation they were on had credentials to, they had the proper access to do that. But they created a local admin account on a server, and then from there they kind of did the normal, a lot of the normal post exploitation playbook. And of course, Sophos is tooting their own horn. They have their MDR agent, and of course, their MDR agents stopped everything except for the one server where the MDR agent wasn't on, and that allowed the ransomware to go to town. But I wanted to bring this up for a couple of reasons. One was this tactic of of bombing employees with spam is becoming really pervasive, and it seems like something that if you haven't already included it into your employee training, your employee security awareness training, you probably should, because I think it's pretty simple and I think it will resonate with people. Right?
Yeah, I agree. I would also say where I tend to drift on this one is how can I prevent my employee from downloading and activating some sort of remote access tool without IT's oversight? Like how some of these you can even install without local admin if it's in the Microsoft Store, like Quick Assist is, that sort of thing. But there are configuration options that I can turn on that limits someone's ability to install something they shouldn't install, which I think would stop a lot of these hard in the tracks, right? If IT is telling you to install, fake IT is telling you to install something, they just don't have the permissions, they don't have the capability, they don't have the option. Uh, that I think could disrupt a lot of these as well. And then I'm not reliant on the user detecting this very sophisticated social engineering attack.
In this instance, now separate and apart from Quick Assist, which is a little unclear how and if you can lock that down. I think you probably can, but they didn't install anything. Like the VM wasn't installed. They downloaded qemu.exe and a disk image file, and they just ran it from the download directory. So like it didn't actually install anything. It just ran in memory. And so that
But
was
I thought, yeah, I thought they got the user to use Quick Assist to connect to their website
no.
as the initial.
So the way the way it worked was the attacker contacted the victim and said, "Hey, this is going on. I need you to enable Quick Assist." And so they go through the process of enabling Quick Assist, which has you have to install it through the Microsoft App Store.
That's what I'm talking about. Can I stop my user from being able to do that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Not allow the user the ability to change or add that configuration for that tool.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, and mind you, that is a help desk load and a pain in the ass when you take away somebody's ability to manage their own machine and people don't like it and there's cultural impact there. But it protects them from these types of potential attacks. We've seen this sort of, whether it's AnyConnect or whatever type of, hey, I'm so-and-so, I need you to install this kind of attack. This is a little bit more sophisticated and probably more effective for a while now. And my thought process has often been, how can I enable an environment where IT, central real IT, has actual control over that and the user can't do it? So that's kind of where I was thinking.
Yeah, it does seem like there is an opportunity to better control. I don't know if that's should be a native capability in Windows or if it's something that should be a feature in different MDRs or XDRs or EDRs, whatever.
There's got to be a way. I'm just not familiar enough with current modern Windows administration profiles, but I'm sure there's a way to say only allow these apps, only whitelist certain apps to be allowed to be run. There's got to be.
Well,
I don't know. I'll look into it.
Microsoft has the app blocker, but I think the challenge is that it tends to entropy. I mean, it's really hard to manage, and so one of the fallbacks is that you say, well, anything that's a Microsoft signed application, you can run, and well, that then so you have to have the creativity to know that you should go and block or revoke access to run Quick Assist and many of the other things as well.
Yeah. So just a quick, Google search AI feedback is you can prevent enterprise users from installing Quick Assist with App Blocker, Windows Firewall, or Intune policies to block Quick Assist application or its network access. So, you could probably go down a blacklist of common remote access tools and block those via Intune policy. Something like that, I think, would be effective, and then at least would disrupt the attack chain a little bit.
And I would go further. So completely agree with that. Like I think, except for the ones that you use, you should block all of the the brand name ones, because that's how a lot of these attacks are being perpetrated now. But I would also, to the extent you can, for the ones that you do legitimately use, make sure that you're allow listing the sources or the destinations, however you think about it, where those agents are able to connect to or connect from. But also, to the extent you can, flag when someone tries to install Quick Assist.
That's a good point. Yeah. Why? Why are they trying to install?
Why? Well, why? Like, if you go to a bank right now You go to a bank right now and you say, I need a money order for $2,000. What is the teller going to say? Like, they're going to ask
Nothing.
you.
It's Sunday. They're closed.
That's true. The teller's going to ask you if they're going to ask questions that help identify whether you are the victim of a scam. And I had to do this. It was not a money order, but a cashier's check. I was trying to help my son buy a car after his car got totaled. And they, like, I had to convince them that I wasn't falling victim to some like romance scam or what, whatever. So
No, you were falling victim to a son needing a car scam.
yes, it was far worse, far worse. So anyway, I think that it's a similar sort of thing. Like, why are you, the employee, trying to install this? Like, something has driven you to do this, and it's probably not okay. So, like, I would, I would say that is something that should be followed up on. If you have an alert of someone, trying to install a remote access software, whatever that is, enabling RDP, Quick Assist, Team Viewer, like whatever it is, and even if you block it, I don't think it's enough to block it. Like, I would want to know why, what happened with that employee that caused that, and that there may not be a lot to it. It may just be that, like, you have to give them some coaching or what have you, or it might lead you down a path of like, holy crap, we have a concerted attack going on because 10 of these things just happened in recent times. So I don't let that signal go to waste, I guess, is my point.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And you might get some perplexed users like, yeah, well, you guys told me to do it. Nah, I don't think we did.
Well, but that's an interesting data point on its own. Like, if you have somebody that is running around and mimicking your help desk, that might be something that you have to raise awareness about.
Or your help desk has been bribed, and
Oh, well, that's true. That never happens. That almost never happens.
now you've got bigger problems.
It almost never happens. To Coinbase. So
good luck to them.
Yes. Anyway, that is that's all I have on that story. Anything else from you?
No, it's we're heading into summer, and maybe we'll have to do some shows from the pool. I don't know. I'm just throwing out random ideas.
You know what? I did recently get a waterproof camera, and so I'm thinking that, in fact, I could like be on a floaty.
You could. Don't take it in the shower to test it, please. None of us need to see that.
Damn it! Are you okay? All right.
I know you're unemployed and you're trying to find new avenues for income. I understand.
Well, what about my feet? I mean, that's okay, right?
How's it been going for you so far?
Not very well. I have some ugly dogs.
So I think we need to go find some more sponsors. I think is what it comes down to.
Yes.
And I hope people are finding our sponsors useful, as we said at the top of the show.
Yeah, and if you do, by the way, info@defensivesecurity.org is where we want to hear about it. Look, we put a lot of work into those. Whether or not they're real, we put a lot of work into those. So
you bite your tongue. How dare you?
Anyhow, thank you for listening, and another thank you to our Patreon sponsors. Thank you very much. Hopefully this was
absolutely
a useful discussion to you. The world is ever changing, but certain things seem like I just have to say, like, it feels like a lot of this is very repetitive, even though it's like packaged up in different ways. It feels maybe somewhat repetitive. But we had a story last week where uh, there was a security researcher involved in a, a vulnerability disclosure. I think it was the CPU one, and he said it well. Like the the basics still matter, right?
Yep. It's
And
hard. It's not fun. It's not sexy. It's not exciting, but it matters.
yeah, yeah, it makes a difference. So hopefully take that away. This is a lot of what we talk about is just expanding on the basics. So anyway, you can find links to the stories we talked about on our website at defensivesecurity.org. Just look for episode 308. I'll also include a link to our Patreon page if you would like to help sponsor us. And you can find me on infosec.exchange. It's at Jerry at infosec.exchange. And that is my Mastodon Fediverse instance. So where can people find you if they want to talk to you?
Also, your lovely and wonderful infosec.exchange server at Lerg, L-E-R-G, and also on X at Lerg, L-E-R-G. And occasionally I bump around LinkedIn being amazed at what people post.
You have so many salespeople that are just best friends with you. I know.
They want my money. At least my company's money.
Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.